In this video, we're counting down 15 reasons why children of the 1960s were simply built different. Number 1. No helicopter parents. Ever wonder when kids were actually allowed to be kids without a GPS tracker on their wrist? Back in the 1960s, children would kiss mom goodbye in the morning and vanish into the neighborhood until dinner time. No questions asked. Can you imagine that today? The freedom was incredible. Modern parents would have a panic attack at the very thought. These days, it's all tracking apps, hourly text check-ins, and parents hovering over every math problem and playground interaction. But those 1960s parents weren't being negligent. They were intentionally letting their children develop crucial life skills through real-world experience. Kids back then learned the hard way that actions had consequences. Fall out of a tree? You'd think twice about climbing that high again. Get into an argument with your friend? You had to figure out how to resolve it without mom mediating. This hands-off approach wasn't about parents being lazy. It was about building resilience and problem-solving abilities through authentic experiences. Number 2. The go outside and play mentality. While modern parents meticulously schedule their children's every waking moment, 60s parents simply pointed to the door and said 4 magic words: go outside and play. That directive wasn't a polite suggestion. It was practically the foundation of childhood itself. Did you know kids in the 1960s spent an astonishing 3 to 4 hours outside every day compared to today's measly 30 minutes? That's not just a slight difference. It's an entirely different childhood experience. Once outside, these kids weren't sitting around waiting for entertainment to find them. They were scaling trees until branches bent precariously, inventing elaborate games of tag with neighborhood-specific rules, racing bikes down hills that would make modern parents faint, and exploring every creek and hidden corner of their surroundings. Number 3. No instant gratification. Those problem-solving skills kids developed weren't just for outdoor adventures. They extended to mastering the now-forgotten art of waiting. In a world where instant gratification simply didn't exist, 60s kids developed mental muscles that are practically endangered today. Remember saving your allowance for months to buy that special toy? Kids in the 60s did this routinely, calculating exactly how many lawns they'd need to mow before that coveted item could be theirs. Mail-order toys required legendary patience. That Superman cape you sent away for wouldn't arrive in 8 hours with Amazon Prime, but 6 to 8 weeks later, practically an eternity in kid time. Saturday morning cartoons weren't available on demand. They were a once-a-week event children anticipated for days. Miss your favorite show? Too bad. You'd wait another 7 days for another chance. This wasn't just inconvenient, it was actually building critical life skills. Number 4. Dangerous playgrounds and risky outdoor activities. While patience was reshaping 60s kids' minds, the playgrounds of the era were busy toughening up their bodies in ways that would make modern parents absolutely panic. Ever climbed a 10-foot metal slide that had been baking in the summer sun for hours? Back then, that scorched leg experience wasn't considered a design flaw. It was just part of the playground experience. These metal and concrete jungles weren't accidents of poor planning. They were standard-issue childhood training grounds. You'd spin on merry-go-rounds until the world blurred and your stomach lurched, climb jungle gyms positioned directly over unforgiving concrete, and learn through painful trial and error what your body could handle. No rubber padding, no plastic-coated chains, no safety inspectors measuring fall distances, just raw physics lessons delivered through scraped knees and occasional bruises. Number 5. Tougher social environment. Those metal playgrounds might have toughened kids' knees, but the social battlefield of the 1960s is what truly forged their emotional armor. In a world before adults refereed every childhood dispute, kids had to navigate complex social territories entirely on their own terms. Remember how Grandpa seems completely unfazed by office politics? There's a reason for that. When conflicts erupted between children in the 60s, there were no teachers rushing in with conflict resolution strategies or parents scheduling mediation sessions. Kids settled their own scores, established their own pecking orders, and learned the hard way which battles were worth fighting. The neighborhood was its own little society with unwritten rules that everyone understood or quickly learned through sometimes painful lessons. Number 6. Walked and biked everywhere. That self-reliance extended beyond just making decisions. It hit the road too. Kids in the 1960s were practically human GPS systems navigating their worlds on foot and by bicycle. While today's parents might consider a 3-mile journey to school absolute madness without adult supervision, 60s kids covered these distances without a second thought. Not because they were trying to impress anyone. It was simply Tuesday morning. These kids weren't just getting places. They were developing an internal map of their surroundings. They discovered hidden pathways between neighborhoods, memorized shortcut routes through vacant lots, and learned which streets to avoid during rush hour. Each journey became a mini-adventure, especially when weather turned challenging or unexpected detours became necessary. Number 7. Less supervision, more independence. Beyond just walking to school, freedom for 60s kids extended to their entire existence. Imagine just hearing, "Be home by dark" as your only instruction for the entire day. No hourly check-ins, no GPS tracking, just pure unsupervised freedom from morning until the streetlights came on. These weren't quick trips to the playground either. Kids in the 1960s were routinely trusted to be completely out of contact for 8 to 10 hours at a stretch. While today's parents panic if their child doesn't respond to a text within minutes, 60s parents simply expected their kids would figure things out on their own. The adventures these kids had without adult oversight would terrify modern parents. 6- and 7-year-olds regularly roamed neighborhoods without supervision. By age 10, staying home alone was common practice, and by 12, many kids were already trusted babysitters watching other children. Number 8. The toughness of the times. That self-reliance kids developed through neighborhood adventures was only half the story. Behind those carefree bike rides and pickup games lurked something far more serious, a world that seemed perpetually on the brink of disaster. While today's parents carefully shield children from upsetting news, 60s kids came home from unsupervised play to witness history's darkest moments unfold live on their television screens. Imagine being a third grader when JFK was assassinated. Children across America watched in real time as their parents wept openly. Their sense of security shattered as they realized that even presidents weren't safe. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, elementary school students practiced duck and cover drills, crouching under desks while contemplating the very real possibility of nuclear annihilation. Number 9. Less safety, more freedom. Beyond developing resilience through world events, 60s kids faced everyday dangers that would send modern parents into panic attacks. Those classic toys your grandparents reminisce about? They were literal hazards waiting to happen. While today's toys undergo rigorous safety testing, 60s children regularly played with items containing actual toxic chemicals without a single warning label in sight. Remember super elastic bubble plastic? This beloved toy contained polyvinyl acetate and ethyl acetate, chemicals that released harmful fumes kids happily inhaled while creating colorful plastic bubbles. No masks, no ventilation requirements, just pure chemical fun. Number 10. Stronger work ethic. Those scars and bumps from dangerous playgrounds weren't the only things toughening up 60s kids. Actual responsibility started shaping them from a remarkably young age. While today's children build resumes with carefully curated extracurriculars, kids in the 1960s were already punching time clocks. A paper route at age 10? Completely normal. Babysitting toddlers by age 12? That was just expected. These weren't symbolic jobs either. Picture a 10-year-old trudging through knee-deep snow at 5 a.m. to deliver newspapers, or a preteen mowing lawns in sweltering summer heat without supervision. Farm kids were up before sunrise feeding animals and helping with harvests. These weren't considered child labor violations. They were simply part of growing up. Number 11. Exposure to raw media. Those quarters from paper routes weren't the only thing shaping 60s kids into resilient adults. While today's parents meticulously monitor screen time and content ratings, the family television set of the 1960s delivered an unfiltered dose of reality that would shock modern sensibilities. Imagine sitting down for dinner as a family and watching actual footage of Vietnam War casualties right between bites of meatloaf. No content warnings, no parental advisories, just raw, unedited scenes of body bags and battlefield injuries beaming directly into living rooms across America. The nightly news wasn't sanitized for younger viewers. Children witnessed civil rights protesters being beaten with fire hoses and police dogs, assassination coverage, and the brutal realities of social upheaval alongside their parents. Number 12. No constant technology. While these children processed complex realities through their TV screens, they also faced something modern kids might find utterly terrifying: hours of unstructured time with nothing to scroll through. Imagine having just 3 television channels, and those only available during certain hours. When your favorite show ended, that was it. No streaming the next episode, no YouTube alternatives, just nothing. This technological desert created a generation of kids who mastered the lost art of entertaining themselves. When the TV went off, 60s kids pulled out board games, dove into books, or constructed elaborate model airplanes and ships. On rainy afternoons, they'd transform cardboard boxes into spaceships or build blanket forts that became the centerpiece of imaginative play for hours. Number 13. Self-reliance was key. That lack of constant technology created a generation where self-reliance wasn't just encouraged, it was expected. In the 1960s, the phrase, "figure it out yourself," wasn't considered harsh parenting. It was the standard approach that built extraordinary problem-solving abilities. Children as young as 10 were regularly preparing family meals, tackling household repairs, and handling responsibilities that would shock many of today's parents. What's particularly striking about this era was the trust placed in children's capabilities. By age 12, kids weren't just taking care of themselves, they were entrusted with the care of younger siblings, cooking meals that fed the entire family, and responding to household emergencies without the safety net of a quick phone call to parents. They learned to patch clothing, repair broken toys, and navigate unfamiliar neighborhoods through trial and error. Number 14. The Vietnam War was a reality. That resilience wasn't just built through everyday problem-solving, it was forged in the shadow of a war that touched virtually every family in America. When was the last time you saw teenagers watching the evening news with the same intensity as a sporting event? In the 60s, those broadcasts weren't just information. They were life-or-death updates about brothers, neighbors, and friends fighting in Vietnam. For teenage boys, the draft lottery wasn't some historical footnote. It was a terrifying reality hanging over their future plans. Imagine turning 18, knowing your birthday might determine whether you'd be heading to college or combat. The introduction of the lottery system in 1969 transformed birthday celebrations into anxiety-filled occasions where your date of birth could literally become your death sentence. Number 15. Tougher entertainment. The harsh realities of the 60s extended beyond global conflicts and into the toy box itself. Ever wonder why grandparents scoff at today's endless warning labels? Their childhood playthings would give modern safety inspectors heart attacks, and kids absolutely loved them for it. Remember super elastic bubble plastic? This beloved toy contained polyvinyl acetate and ethyl acetate, chemicals that released toxic fumes when children inevitably put their faces right up to the straw to blow bubbles. Parents didn't think twice about gifting their kids the chance to inhale potentially hazardous chemicals in the name of fun.